I wore the Navy SEAL Trident. I thought it made me one of the most dangerous men on the planet, the absolute elite. But in October 1970, in a God-forsaken piece of jungle in Long An province, I learned a lesson from 5 Australians that cost 9 American lives. And that lesson was this: the symbol of a warrior is worthless if your enemy has already beaten it. My name is Christopher Allen Strickland. I'm 76 years old. Back then, I was a petty officer first class, SEAL Team 1. I was 28, and I thought I knew everything. I was wrong. I was there. I saw it all happen. We had the gear, the numbers, the plan, an 89-page plan, and it meant nothing, absolutely nothing, because we were loud, and they were quiet. For 54 years, I haven't spoken about this, not to a soul, not my wife, not my kids, nobody. You didn't. There's a code of silence. You protect the unit. You protect the mission. Even when you know in your gut it was a catastrophic failure from the start. The commanders who signed off on it, Major Davis and the rest, they were all still alive. But they're all gone now. And the weight of it, the guilt, it doesn't fade. It gets heavier every single year. 9 men, 9 good American soldiers, dead. For what? For an empty bunker and a lesson in humility we were too damn arrogant to learn any other way. I was a part of that arrogance. I led the charge. And it's time someone told the truth. So how did it happen? Listen to me. How could 5 men, 5 Aussies with worn-out webbing and what looked like museum-piece rifles, succeed where 180 of America's finest failed? Failed so badly we left 9 of our own behind in the mud. What was it they knew? What did they see in that jungle that we, with our encrypted radios and our night vision and our helicopters, were completely blind to? It was like they could hear the earth breathe, and we were just making noise. And what happens when you survive? But the badge you earned with blood and sweat, the one you were so proud of, becomes a permanent reminder of your own deadly pride. Stay with me. You need to hear this. I'm going to tell you what happens when your whole world comes crashing down. It was October 1970, Long An province, a VC stronghold. Everyone knew it. The whole place was a maze of rivers and canals, perfect for them, hell for us. 6 months of signals intelligence, SIGINT they called it, pointed to a major VC command post in that area, supposedly running operations across 3 whole provinces. So the plan was simple: overwhelming force, a classic hammer and anvil strike. We had about 180 guys, 24 of us SEALs, 110 Army Rangers, and another 46 regular infantry to act as a blocking force. The environment. Christ. It was the end of the monsoon season. You could drink the air. 90% humidity. Easy. And the heat, 35 degrees Celsius, but it felt like 50. You couldn't see 15 meters in front of your face most of the time. Leeches, snakes, booby traps everywhere. It wasn't a place you wanted to be. It was a place designed to kill you slowly. I remember we flew in on a Huey, the noise just deafening. The second I stepped off that bird, the smell hit me. It wasn't just jungle. It was something else, like diesel fumes and mud and something sweet like rotting fruit. But underneath it all, there was this other smell, earthy, primal. It was the smell of the 5 Aussies standing there waiting. They had come to observe. The heat just wrapped around you, a thick, wet blanket. You could feel the sweat bead on your forehead instantly. I was 28, a SEAL. I thought we were the baddest men on the planet. I was certain this was just another job, a showcase, a chance to show these observers, these guys from down under, how the pros did it. I expected to be in and out, mission done, another notch on the belt. Simple. I was a professional, and this was just another day at the office, or so I believed. I'd heard stories about these SASR guys, whispers in the mess halls, guys who'd worked with them before. They said they were ghosts, that they moved through the jungle like they were born in it. Someone told me once, I think it was a Green Beret sergeant, he said, "Those blokes don't fight the jungle, mate. They ask its permission." I laughed it off. Sounded like some mystical bullshit to me. I grabbed my buddy Jake, another SEAL from my team, and pointed them out across the briefing tent. They were just quiet, watching. Their gear was all worn out, faded. I leaned over to Jake and said, "Look at this lot. They're about to watch the professionals at work." I meant it, too. We were the tip of the spear. We had the tech, the training, the budget. They had patience? It seemed like a joke. We were there to show them how a real war was fought. We first saw them properly in the main briefing tent, not from a distance, up close. And the first thing that hit you, before you saw anything, was the smell. It wasn't BO. It was the jungle, a living scent, damp earth, leaf mold, and something else, something wild and faintly coppery, like old blood. It clung to them like a second skin. Their uniforms, what was left of them, were faded to a pale, ghostly green, almost gray in places, and patched with darker material. Their webbing wasn't the new tactical stuff we had. It was old, worn canvas, stained dark with sweat and God knows what else. They didn't stand like soldiers on a base. They stood like they were still out there, in the green, just listening. I remember thinking, clear as a bell, my God, they look like they've been buried and dug back up. It was a brutal, ugly thought, and I meant every word of it. I saw their sergeant, Fraser, looking at our maps. He had this look, quiet, still, like a hawk watching a field. I felt this surge of, pity, maybe. Arrogance, definitely. I walked over, all confidence, my gear new and clean, my trident gleaming under the tent lights. I leaned in and I said, "Hey, Sarge, if you blokes need extra water purification tabs, just give a yell. We've got cases of 'em." He looked up at me. No anger, no emotion at all, really. Just these pale blue eyes that seemed to see right through me, right through the gear, the badge, all of it. He gave a slow blink and said, "Appreciate it, mate. We only carry what we need." That was it. 5 words. We only carry what we need. And the way he said it, so calm, so final, it wasn't a thank you. It was a statement, a correction. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of something uncomfortable, a feeling that I was the one who didn't understand the conversation. Then I saw their rifles. They were carrying the old L1A1s, the self-loading rifles. But they were all wrong. They'd wrapped the metal parts, the sling swivels, the barrels in this worn green tape to stop the glare, stop any noise. They'd even sawed off the carrying handles. I grabbed Jake's arm and whispered, "Look at that. They're butchering their own weapons. That's against every reg in the book." It was sloppy, unprofessional. But then I saw Fraser rack the bolt on his, and it didn't make a sound. Not a click, nothing. He'd polished the mechanism until it was silent. My mind just short-circuited. How? Why? You're taught to maintain your weapon to spec, not rebuild it in the dirt. But there it was, silent, deadly. A weapon that didn't belong to an army, it belonged to him. A little alarm bell went off in my head, a tiny voice saying, "Wait a minute." But I pushed it down. There had to be a reason they were this far behind the curve. There had to be. But that quiet rifle, that was just the start of it. because I was about to find out they didn't fight like us. They didn't think like us. They didn't even die like us. It was Fraser who explained it to me, days later, after everything. I asked him about the smell. He just looked at me with those quiet eyes. He told me they start 5 days before a patrol. No soap, no deodorant, no coffee, no cigarettes. They eat a bland, simple diet. He said a man who smokes can be smelled by a good tracker from 500 meters away. A man who uses soap, 200. They wanted to smell of nothing. Or rather, they wanted to smell of the jungle itself, to erase their own chemical signature. He said, "The enemy is an animal, mate, and you hunt an animal by smelling like the world it lives in, not like the world you left behind." When he told me that, I still thought it was extreme, overkill. But then he showed me a report, an internal study. 70% of their contacts were initiated by them. For us, it was closer to 40. The enemy was finding us first. We were the prey. And their tactics, my God, it was a completely different universe. We moved fast, 10, maybe 12 kilometers a day. We were a hammer, loud, aggressive. They moved, slow, so slow, maybe 2 kilometers in a day. 2. They'd sit in one spot for hours, just listening, watching. We had constant radio traffic, check-ins, status reports, chatter. They maintained total radio silence, only breaking it for a life or death emergency. We were taught to engage, to overwhelm with fire and maneuver. That was our job. They did everything they could to avoid a fight. Fraser said something that it stopped me cold. He said, "We don't get paid to find the enemy. We get paid for the enemy to never, ever know we were there at all." They weren't soldiers, you see, not like us. They were hunters, and their goal wasn't to kill, it was to disappear. That was the core of it, the real difference. Our entire philosophy was about presence, about intimidation. We wanted Charlie to know we were there, to feel our power, to be scared of the noise and the technology and the sheer force of us. We were an invading army. Their philosophy was the complete opposite. It was about absence, invisibility. They didn't want to impose their will on the jungle. They wanted to be accepted by it, to become just another shadow among the leaves. Fraser put it to me perfectly once. We were looking at a map, and he just tapped it and said, "You blokes want the enemy to know you're here. We want them to die never knowing we were." And that shook me, because it made perfect sense. I saw a report, an intelligence summary. It had their kill ratio in it, 1 to 500. 1 Australian lost for every 500 enemy killed. I thought it was a typo. It had to be. But it wasn't. It was the second day, the 11th hour of the operation. We were moving towards the primary bunker, the heart of the supposed command center. The prep bombardment had stopped an hour ago, and the silence it left behind was loud, louder than the explosions. All you could hear was the squelch of our boots in the mud and the hum of a million insects that sounded like they were chewing on your brain. The air tasted of cordite and wet dirt. I could feel the weight of my gear, the straps digging into my shoulders, my uniform soaked through with sweat that felt cold and greasy. I remember seeing Jake give me a thumbs up, his face lit green by the early night vision gear we had. We thought we were ghosts. I kicked the bunker door. It swung open into blackness, and the smell that rolled out, it wasn't fear or cordite. It was just cold, damp earth, and nothing else. They were gone. In the first 10 seconds, nobody spoke. The silence in that bunker was a physical thing. You could taste the emptiness. Then the LT's voice crackled on the radio. "Sweep and clear. I want this whole complex tossed. Now." We moved out, spreading through the empty huts, the empty trenches. Anger started to bubble up. All this for nothing. I was checking a spider hole near the south perimeter, my M16 pointed down into the dark, when I heard it. A faint twang, like a guitar string breaking. It wasn't the sound that scared me, it was how small it was. Then came the whump. Not a bang, a deep, wet thump that you felt in your guts, a sound that rips the air apart. Then the screaming started, on the radio. "Contact! Man down! Ranger squad, we're hit! Medic!" I knew that call. It was PFC Evans' squad, the kid, 19. We'd shared a coffee just hours before. I ran towards the sound. Other guys were running too. The chaos. It was organized, but it was still chaos. Medics screaming for plasma, guys setting up a perimeter, the LT on the radio trying to get a handle on it all. But the damage was done. They'd left us a farewell gift, a series of booby traps daisy-chained together. Simple, effective. 9 men. 9. Not in a firefight, not in some blaze of glory, taken out by a piece of wire in an empty camp. I saw them carrying Evans. His face was gone. I just stood there, mud up to my ankles, the smell of blood and cordite filling my lungs. I looked down at my rifle, this top-of-the-line piece of killing machinery. Useless. I looked at the Trident on my chest. A joke. And I thought, this is it. This is failure. And that's when I saw him, walking out of the command tent back at base. Sergeant Fraser. He just watched us, his face giving nothing away. And I knew. I just knew he wasn't surprised. Not at all. On the flight back, the noise of the Huey was a blessing. It meant you didn't have to talk. Didn't have to look at the other guys. I just stared at the floor, at the mud and grime. When we got to the debrief, I tried. I really did. Major Davis was furious, talking about bad intelligence, a blown source. I waited for a pause and I said, "Sir, it wasn't just the intel. We were too loud. They heard us coming." Davis just stared at me, a cold, hard stare. And he said, "What I heard, petty officer, was 9 of my men dying. The intel was bad. That's the report." I tried to explain what Fraser had told me about the smell, the silence. He cut me off. "Don't bring me that jungle voodoo bullshit, Strickland. End of discussion." How do you tell someone that everything they believe, everything they've built their career on, is wrong? You can't. You just can't. So I shut my mouth. I went back to my gear. I picked up my rifle. It felt different, heavy, useless. I tried to change things, in my own squad at least. I made them move slower, taught them how to tape their gear so it didn't rattle, made them stop using the damn aftershave from the PX. The other guys, they thought I was crazy. But on 2 patrols, 2, it worked. We saw them before they saw us. We just faded back into the jungle. No shots fired. Nobody died. I wrote a report, a long one. I put the kill ratios in it. 1 SASR for 500 VC. 1 of us for every 12. I detailed Fraser's methods. I handed it to my lieutenant. A week later, he handed it back. A coffee stain on the corner. He said command felt it was anecdotal and lacked tactical objectivity. It was buried. 3 weeks after that, we went on another big push. Same plan, same noise. We lost 4 more men. 4. And I just knew, they didn't have to die. And that's what I live with. The knowledge that the lesson was right there, written in blood, and they just chose not to read it. It's about pride. That's what it comes down to. Institutional pride. It's an inertia that's more powerful than any enemy. You invest billions in a doctrine, in training, in equipment. You build careers on it. Then a report from some God-forsaken jungle says it's all wrong. What do? You don't admit it. You can't. The cost is too high. Not the cost in dollars, the cost to your ego. So you bury the report. You blame bad intelligence. And you keep sending boys out to die for a theory you know is broken. How many conflicts did it take? How many lives before those lessons, the ones Fraser laid out on a muddy table in 1970, finally started to stick? You didn't really see it until the Tier 1 units in Afghanistan, 20, 30 years later. Small teams, deep reconnaissance, low profile. They learned, finally. But why did it take so long? How do you explain it? You have the evidence, the numbers, the coffins coming home, and you change nothing. It makes you ask, doesn't it? Where are you doing the same thing? Ignoring the plain truth because admitting you're wrong hurts too much. What's it going to cost before you listen? Remember those 3 questions from the beginning? Let me answer them for you. How could 5 men do what 180 of us couldn't? Because they weren't fighting the jungle. They were asking its permission. We were a loud, clumsy machine trying to smash our way through. They were ghosts. What did they know that we didn't? They knew technology was a liability, that it makes you deaf. They knew the most powerful weapon in that place wasn't a rifle, it was silence. And what happens when the badge you cherish becomes a reminder of your own deadly pride? It becomes a weight, a cold, heavy weight you carry every single day. A constant reminder of 9 good men who died because I was too arrogant to see the truth right in front of my face. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to swallow your pride and admit you were completely wrong about something important? How did that feel? If you want more stories that nobody tells you, that institutions prefer to bury, subscribe. 1 to 500. 54 years later, that number, it still wakes me up at night.